All right. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another Wine Shark Wednesday, which right now I'm just talking to myself because none of you guys are here yet because I was running a bit late. But, story of my life, kind of unfortunately. Anyhow, we're going to talk a little bit this week about cooking with wine and, of course, the grocery store grab. But just to start off with kind of a recap of what's been going on in Wine Shark land. Been playing around more with camera stuff and video things and trying to learn about this, that, and whatnot, doing some interstitial videos and little things like that, little teaser trailers and stuff to plug into other places. Plus, some stuff to maybe run on some advertising and help the channel grow, that kind of stuff. So it's been kind of fun. In fact, I'm even thinking about getting a friend of mine here letting me borrow his green screen, and Patrick to let me loan me his green screen so I can move the undisclosed location to various wacky sorts of things. All of you who think, oh, you should be in a cellar, you should be in a great environment. No, dude, all the real people can do the actual things with the actual cellars. I should be on something way cooler, like, the Bridge of the Millennium Falcon or, somewhere else. So it'll be cool for fancy fun and, just kind of messing around. But, just ideas that have been messing around with. What else has been going on? Also, been wondering and reading a lot about in industry rags. Here we go, Mr. John, Miss Jenna. Hello, how are we doing? No, but John, if I did moon base, I think I'd end up looking like Moon. It'd be like Sam Rockwell and Moon, going crazy and having another version of myself show up to do the show. It'd be hilarious. Spoiler alert, too late. Anyway, but been reading a lot of industry stuff about about kind of basically just about a lot about the pandemic economy, if you will, specifically as it relates to the spirits, wine, and beer industries. So kind of interesting when we talk about just some of what the economics effects have been. It's been, how people are adapting, how people are having to change, and some of the negative effects it's having, but also just how people think things are happening regarding your particular consumption habits. Wanted to spell something right now from multiple sources that I have. We're not actually drinking much any more than we were somehow from before the pandemic. This idea that everybody's locked in their houses, just drinking their days away is, I mean, even though it's my job, is not true. That is not actually how I spend my days. The consumption of retail and carry out and the amount of stuff that we're drinking at home has obviously shifted since we're not out in public and spending on the retail sector. So direct to consumer and on-premises retail sales or off-premises retail sales as opposed to on-premises sales are the sectors that are seeing growth. But there are still trends in what people are buying, and that's kind of fascinating to me. So when you guys have a chance, you guys get in the comments below after this is over and talk to me about what your quarantine and pandemic drinks of choice are. Some of the interesting things that I'm seeing, for instance, is the stellar growth of the ready-made cocktails. That sector is really kind of blowing up. So we talk about you buy something, then it's all you have to do is add booze. But this has gone from long gone are the days of buying a bottle of sickly sweet neon, 3 Mile Island green margarita mix and just throwing some tequila in it, to these are very much aimed at a more refined cocktail palette / very much hitting on the craft in a can kind of momentum. I haven't tried any, and I'm about to go experiment with some sooner or later here because I'm interested in whether they've actually achieved that or not. In other words, ready-made cocktails aren't new. The idea is pretty darn old, and so I'm wondering what's so darn different. I've heard some good things. I read some hey, these are pretty credibles to people who are just talking about the industry growth. So I haven't heard any of the negatives yet, and I'm sure they've got to be out there. The problem is right now, the only people talking about them are the people wanting to sell them. So as usual, do your own research. Tell me what exactly it is that you're liking. Although please don't tell me about your hard seltzer habit. It's just, I get it. I understand. Everybody's got a White Claw problem these days. So Anyhow, today's topic for the day, we're going to talk about a fan request here, several requested multiple times, as a matter of fact, cooking with wine. Yes, it not just for your drinking pleasure anymore. Wine is also an excellent culinary companion. So let's talk about. We're going to talk about what it is, what its functions are, and styles, and kind of the ways to think about this. So first, what does wine bring to the party? Why would you want to cook with wine as opposed to drinking wine while you cook? Answer. The number one thing it's bringing is acid. Wine grapes are highly acidic. Acidity in the 3 to 4 pH range is pretty good. Only a few of the citrus fruits, for instance, are higher in the acid range. So acid as a component of food, if you guys are watching the salt, fat, heat, acid kind of trend, acid is a critical component in there. Number two, complex flavors and aromatics built by time itself. Because wine has time to develop, at the usually, skipping out on the nouveau trends, usually you're talking about your average type of dry wine, table style wine, when we'll talk about which those apply to later, is usually spending 3 to 6 months prior to preparation and developing all these aromatics and flavors that we like. And those cannot be shortcut. In fact, these are the only way to present them. Very similar to elements like, say, soy sauce, Worcester, fish sauce, all these types of things, which are other fermented sauces that are layered builds of flavor. They often have a lot of time put into them, and they have to ferment and take a lot of time to develop that flavor, which gives complexity. So complex flavors and aromatics are definitely in the wine wheelhouse, as well as just the simple concentrated fruit flavors that they, of course, bring to the table, depending on the style. Donna says she's got a great recipe for round steak cooked with Pinot Noir. Yeah, and so we're going to talk about how all those different styles, and definitely you should share that recipe on the on Facebook, Donna. That'd be awesome. I'd love to try it out. So those basic components, acid, complex flavors and aromatics, and fruit, are what wine, generally speaking, is bringing to the party. That's what you're doing with it. But let's talk about its functions within cooking. So there are basically 4 major functions that we're using when it comes to cooking with wine. Either being added to foods, either the savior of flavor, the concentration of power, or you're soaking in it. So let's unpack these one at a time. Adding to foods, okay? The first and most probably just simple thing is using the above examples of what wine brings to the party to add flavor and layers of flavor to enhance food that is already there. Okay, so just simply adding wine to the food. This is the cup of red wine in your spaghetti sauce kind of model. I'm interested from Donna's. I would bet that if it's a round steak cooked with Pinot Noir, it's a similar thing, that the Pinot Noir is at some point added to add some sort of flavor. Beef bourguignon, for instance, is a classic example of a slow braised in a lot of red wine and stock beef. And those flavors are being added to the food. So just as a simple flavor additive, that's the most basic added to wine thing, right? We're taking that complex thing, putting it in the food. Hooray. The next kind of layer up is the savior of flavor. Okay, we're talking here about deglazing. Deglazing is how you keep the food flavors that you've cooked with in the pan, how you keep them in the food. When you take that nice piece of protein or vegetables out of the cooking vessel that you're using it, let's say a saute pan, especially if you've been using a direct heat application, like say frying, so you're going to take that you're going to have a lot of food left over in the pan, especially at the microscopic level, but also just the brown bits that are stuck due to the cooking reactions, Maillard reactions, things like that. Right? You want to make sure that you're not wasting that. And you'll see good chefs everywhere take and talk about saving flavor at every point, because there's all these aroma compounds that are in there that you've developed. You don't want to waste that. In fact, you can't even recreate that off of the shelf, right? There's not, false flavors to this. So using vino as your to the rescue as a superior and flavored extractor of those flavors. You take your pan, you deglaze with a little bit of wine, Yes, so you grab you grab your spatula and scrape the bottom of that thing, get all those brown bits up. That right there is the start of a lot of great sauces and gravies, and is the perfect combination of wine plus extra flavor, and then going on to be something that's a major component of your meal. Yes, and Mary is talking about alcohol versus water solvent flavors, right? Vodka and tomato sauce. Very good point. The classic vodka sauce. We're going to touch on the alcohol and where it comes into play, actually there as well. But it's a great example about alcohol solubility. So because that, and you remember alcohol by volume, literally what percent are we talking about of the beverage is alcohol? Usually somewhere between 7 and 15%, which has a good effect for your foods. So the next one, concentrated power. Okay, boiling off that water. We're talking about reductions here. Reductions are those preparations that concentrate flavor. So you boil off that water, and now you've got this highly dense flavor pack. This is usually, you need to perform this very gently when you're doing this. You need to make sure that you're kind of slowly boiling the water off. Don't just turn that thing up to a rolling boil and wait and watch it kind of evaporate. You need to slowly boil that water off. And basically, it's usually about a quarter of its volume. So 1 cup of wine equals about a quarter cup of finalized, concentrated or reduced wine. That's a great way to start a lot of different things. Again, either as a sauce base or as a glaze, demi-glace, that kind of thing. Okay, so that just basically is taking wine and taking that water out and putting it into a concentrated power pill, now in gel form. So, and then finally, you're soaking in it. This is a reference, of course, to a old Palmolive commercial for those that you don't know. But acid is the key player here, as well as its sidekick, tannins, when we're using red wines. Marination, and by the act of marinating, you've usually got some sort of fat, some sort of acid, some sort of seasoning carrier, and you're softening those cell walls and basically acting as a meat tenderizer. And it also helps transfer season into place, specifically via osmosis, right? So we love to have a little bit of that brining technique, right, where we're messing around with salt content. So the bottom line there is you want to make sure that you don't overdo your marination process. You cannot. This is like all cooking techniques. I cannot stress this enough. Get the right amount of marinating time, not too much marinating time. There's a lot of guys and gals that I know that are cooks, mostly guys, though, I got to say that have this more is better attitude. Well, I've been marinating this thing for 48 hours. I'm like, great. You've produced mushy, whatever it was that you were cooking. You basically destroyed everything, and your ribs are going to taste like shit. Sorry. Be the guy to tell you. Now, again, it depends on the style of meat that you're using, is how long you're going to marinate, but there is an end point, and there is certainly a right point. So don't overdo it. Personal advice. There you have it. But anyway, wine is a great choice for your acid and marinade, especially because tannins and stuff work. And again, it's providing its own complicated flavors, not just, say, fruit juices or other types of acids. So, okay, so those are the functions: additives, savior of flavor, concentration of power. You're soaking in it. Let's talk about the styles of wine that go along with each of those, because when we talk about cooking with wine, I want to clarify, we're talking about a lot of different styles of wine. We're not just talking about table wine. I mean, table wine is, most of your wine world falls within this category. The stuff that you're drinking alongside you can be, of course, used in your cooking. It's actually the most versatile in the fact that it does all 4 functions, but it's generally the only style of wine we will marinate in. But it can be added to foods, it can be used to deglaze, it can be used to be reduced, and of course it can be used to marinate. Some things to remember here. Number 1, it's, you can be used from your leftovers, but make sure your wine isn't spoiled when you're using it for whatever function that you're using it for. Okay, that's we're talking about in the tips section a little bit more about that. But the bottom line is, this is a great use for if you've got a little bit of wine left over, that you haven't been able to finish. You can throw it in there, but make sure that it's not wine that's spoiled, gone bad, oxidized, cooked, etc. The idea of hanging on to cooking wine is not a good thing. And in fact, if you see and even buy anything off the shelf that's labeled cooking wine, generally those have salt or pepper actually added to them. There's a whole class of Madeiras that are like that. And let me tell you, they're not good for you. They're just bad. They're awful. They don't do any of the job that we are looking for the wine to do. So avoid the concept of cooking wine at all and just use good quality table wine. So wines that are built for longevity, specifically wines that are pre-oxidized. Okay, pre-oxidized wines gain a nutty, warm, and robust flavor profile as part of that oxidization process. Okay, we're taught the particular group of flavors is an excellent additive to a lot of food. These types of wines can also be used to create very intense reductions and are really amazing when it comes to the deglazing job. So again, very versatile. Three of the four methods that we're talking about are easily within this house. This is where I'm talking about sherry, Madeira, and Marsala wines, especially. There's a couple of other outliers too, but those are probably the three you're most common, most well known for. Tawny port could actually fall into this as well because again, it's already got some oxidization to it. That, by the way, is something that is probably missing from most people's cooking regimes. My mother, for instance, always, seems to have sherry on hand. It's something that even as a cook, am not good at keeping on my pantry at easy hand. Remember, your sherry doesn't, sherry. These things don't tend to last once they're open. Although technically, Madeiras will last friggin' forever. Sherries and ports do need to be used within the month or so. So if you're going to keep some on hand for cooking, either have purpose for it, know what you're doing, what you're planning your recipe for, and buy small formats if you can. But generally speaking, this is a transcendent level above just deglazing with wine. So if you're going to take, let's say you're cooking some mushrooms to go on, as a sauce or to go on a piece of protein, like say a steak. Deglazing that pan with sherry is going to taste a whole level up of amazing by comparison to even if you did it with, say, your favorite Pinot Noir. I'm going to tell you from experience that the intensity of flavor and the oxidation is going to go really well with those earthy flavors and really kind of change the direction of your dish. So those longevity built wines they're meant to travel like that, the fortified wine series are excellent choices. Last, we talk about dessert style wines. So this is the spot where most of what you're talking about for the dessert style wines is reductions. Okay, they're mostly used in the reductive capacity. Here we're talking about Sauterne, Trockenbaron Auslese Rieslings, Port, and Pedro Jimenez Sherry. Sweet finisher after dinner drinks, but these are great to take from their already fortified and concentrated selves and to even magnify that more by reducing the water content. By evaporating that water off, you're going to do great stuff. This is the home of syrups, glazes, and demi-glazes, especially, by the way, that can enhance either other courses, of food or specifically to be used, preserving their sweetness and to be used as part of dessert. Try some reduced port over your next bit of ice cream and tell me how much awesome that is. You can do some really amazing stuff. So those are the big kind of raw classes we talk about. Normally the table wine is very much where we usually think, but look to grab and keep on hand some sherry or some Madeira, some Marsala wine. You're going to find your cooking gets elevated to a new level. And especially if you buy those, go seek out some recipes that involve them. I think you'll find that there's plenty of uses you're going to find for it, and yours won't go bad in your pantry. Dessert wines, 100%, man. I mean, it's a way to just magnify dessert to get it even better and better and better. So my personal kind of reminders and rules. Drinkable, but not expensive. Okay. You don't need to seek out the same type of wines that you're necessarily going to serve at your tabletop, right? Rather, at the minimum, there's a minimum point that you're looking at there. But the bottom line is, if you wouldn't put it in your mouth, don't put it in your food. It's the easiest thing here. But usually you don't have. If I'm going to make something like, say, there's an excellent recipe from Stephen Piles that I make that his charred tomato and eggplant soup, and it involves a couple of cups of dry red wine. Okay, you don't need to go out of your way here and blow the doors on a $40 bottle of Stag's Leap Cab, right? You can easily get away with a good solid $10 bottle of something that would also match the flavors. By the way, the flavors in this thing are this kind of Southwest directed charred tomatoes. Um, it's got ancho chili paste in it. It's got this smoky flavor. My favorite wine to use as the example there is one that would match the flavor, and that's a Tempranillo. So a good, solid, inexpensive Tempranillo, say 10 to 12 bucks. It's a perfect choice for that, rather than saying going and buying a Gran Reserva for 40 bucks. Okay, so keep it reasonable. Because of the way you're mixing in the flavors in there, you can splurge, but you're not necessarily going to get all the refinement that you want out of it. I think you'll find that the lower end of the palatable scale will serve you quite well. But number one, if the wines are leftovers, they can't be broken, right? I don't want you using wine that basically has been out all week and you're like, oh, well, I'll just save it, stick it with it. No, just throw it out. It's not good anymore. It's like saving a bit of rancid milk, like acting you're going to make cheese. I mean, it's not really going to work that way. It's just not at all what you think it is. So, next, I mean, that, as Mary pointed out, alcohol plays a part in solubility, but once it's exposed to heat for about 8 to 10 minutes, sometimes up to an hour if you're using very low heat, alcohol doesn't really play a part. Okay, so because its evaporation point is much lower than water, and we usually cook it at boiling point above alcohol's boiling point, we are going to see the alcohol go away. Therefore, it's perfectly safe to cook with, introduce alcohol people that shouldn't have it. This idea of, I don't care that there's wine in your sauce. You can give it to the baby. It's not going to damage anybody. There's no alcohol left in it. Okay, it's long since gone. So don't be irrational about what the fact that your food might have touched alcohol at some point in time. Keep your temperance movement to your ladies dressed in black, and leave me to the wine and cooking features. So anyway, all right. So that's kind of the big summary. When it comes to flavor profiles, actually, let me throw this in here as an ad hoc, because I mentioned it with the tomato eggplant soup. When we're talking about flavors, you can learn the exact same things that I'm talking about here when it comes to wine and food as it comes to wine and cooking. Specifically meaning, well, which wines are the right ones to use for? There is no one right answer. That's like saying, what's my best wine to have with food? That it doesn't exist. There's no right answer for that question. You've got to know how wine flavors work. You got to know how food flavors work. You've got to know what types of things you're going with. When it comes to pairing within the cooking, however, you're actually a little bit more narrow, and there's less to learn. For instance, rarely are you doing actually, no, let me think about that. No, that's not true. There's the same 3 basic methods that I teach my basics class. I would easily say apply in the food world. That is complements, contrasts, and substitutions. We're talking about when either the flavors of the wine and the food are going the same direction. The example I used with the smoky Tempranillo with the smoky soup, we can go the opposite direction. We have a bright and tangy something that's contrasting something creamy, that's adding a little zing. Or the substitution method, where basically the wine is bringing something that the food lacks. So, for instance, if the food has no other acid component, you're using wine to be an additive source of acidity. Therefore, it's a substitutive actual pairing. But again, it's something that takes a little bit of practice, and you do have to know what flavors are what. You can't just decide, I like Chardonnay, and put it in everything that you cook with. That's not going to serve you very well. So there's that little bit of rant. Anyhow, so you got a few people on. Anybody got any questions so far? Questions about cooking with wine, or any other topics for that matter? It's an open format, so I'm interested in now Mary and Dave's preparation of their vodka sauce. So we're gonna have to talk about how their vodka and tomato sauce, which, remember, is much higher alcohol than your wine is, but still alcohol and acidity. It's all kinds of fun. No? All right. Well, then we'll move right upon along into the grocery store grab. So today's grocery store grab, we are doing, John's got a question. I don't know if you've discussed it before, but the impact on the Euro tariffs of imported wines. Yeah, a couple of weeks back, actually, I did a big rant. In fact, the entire grocery store grab topic was kind of the politics and wine episode if you want to go back and check it out. But to give you the short recap, John, yeah, the Americans are getting hosed. The import tariffs are screwing with wine imports from Germany, Spain, and France. Not Italy, mind you, because this isn't actually about European wine. It's about European wine makers that participated in Airbus, because the tariffs were a retaliatory move against an Airbus antitrust suit, which, by the way, was found to be legal. The idea that Airbus was found to be in the wrong, and so that's fine. Fix it. Unfortunately, our idiotic government decided that the best way to do that was against those things which consumers enjoy as the retaliation, as opposed to, say, they could have taken away their ball bearings or something. Shit, I don't know. Anyway, point is, the retaliatory tariffs are below any wines below 2 liters and below X percent, or between X and Y percent alcohol, are affected by up to this 25% tariff. Yes, it's rising prices. Yes, it's making things hard to get a hold of. Yes, people are suffering. And no, the American wine economy isn't benefiting from it, because China did the same thing to us. And people aren't switching to domestic products as some sort of substitution. This isn't about this is that part where if you treat wine as it's a commodity, you're going to be wrong, and that's not the same thing. So people who want to drink French Pinot Noir aren't going to suddenly switch to California Pinot Noir as a easy substitute, because the two things aren't the same. So anyway, it's stupid, and go watch the episode and you'll kind of get a full picture on that. But there you go. So charred tomatoes, I get. Do you grill the eggplant too? It's not grilled. So actually, you take the tomatoes, go face down in a cast iron, and then get full on blackened. In the main main container and stew pot, that you're gonna build the soup in, you chop up the Japanese eggplant and deglaze them with butter and basically brown them, kind of caramelize them. Okay, so they become a sweet caramel thing and a binder for the tomatoes. Those are the two primary components. You throw in some mirepoix, you throw in ancho chili paste, and then a cup of red wine. You also take garlic and about a cup of onion and deglaze the charred pan. You deglaze it with the red wine and the onions and garlic, and kind of scoop up all that flavor from the tomatoes and put it back in the soup. So then you get that awesome flavor savior thing going on. You let it simmer for about 30 minutes. Throw in fresh use oregano, fresh basil, and then top it off. It's the companion to it, by the way, are these delightful crab meat fritters, and then a dollop of sour cream on top. It is decadent. I serve that in one of my tastings as well, so I can actually personally make it for you. As you kind of may notice that I memorized I make it kind of often. I've memorized the damn recipe. So yeah, so or just find Airbus. Yeah, right. Well, that's the thing. They did find Airbus, but it's everybody wants to go to war. But there you go. It's Italian wines aren't being affected, so I guess it's time to buy Italian wines. So anyway, grocery store grab this week. We have the Head Snapper. All right, Head Snapper. This I love the 1920s look of this label. I'd seen it for a while. It's bright orange packaging. It's a Sauvignon Blanc. It's a Marlborough New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. So we took a look at that. For those that don't know about the grocery store grab, or for those that are watching this in posterity and haven't been informed, maybe our first shot at this, our grocery store grab is basically our premise to help get the best value per dollar for wines found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. Not everybody has the luxury of having a great wine shop or even a big box retailer, or simply for convenience shops. When they shop for their groceries, they also shop for their wine. Well, it's a very special landscape out there. With sometimes it can be price gouging and a lot of things that are kind of questionable. So we try and make sure that you spend your best value per dollar. So we choose these wines without prior research, basically focusing on their labels, making sure that the labels are telling us the best information, so that we know that we're spending our dollar correctly. So this week's selection, as I said, is the Head Snapper. So this was $9.89 after retail. It was, I believe, $12.99. It was the pre-club markup. Something I've been warning folks about, especially for those of you that shop at grocery stores that have a club membership style thing. They will often inflate the non-club membership price in order to appear that they're bringing you a particular value. So look for that as a warning sign. If you see a lot of gap in there, you see a $10 bottle of wine with a $20 price tag that's not because the grocery store is able to get you some 50% discount. It means they were just marking it up and penalizing people who don't, go join their club and give them marketing data. But this was well within the normal range, so I didn't think it was particularly marked up. Like I said, they have very attractive packaging there. And it is also a pretty good example of what we look for in the grocery store grab. So it's the Head Snapper Marlborough New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. We look on the front, by the way. So the front of the label, right? It's got the information we need. It's got what the wine is. It's got what year it's made. It's 2018 rather. Sauvignon Blanc, and then where it's from. So it's got the grape. It's got the place. It's got the time. It's got the who. Awesome, simple, very direct. Okay. Very 1920s style Art Deco labeling too, which I totally dig. The back of the label, though, is where we really want to see them do their business correctly, right? This is the type of thing that makes the difference in if we don't know anything about wine, what are we looking for? What type of information are we trying to get off the back of the label? So they said they did a great job of minimizing their, kind of balancing up or minimizing their marketing text compared to their functional words. So, there are a number of reasons why you might do a double take. But when it comes down to it, it's what's outside the bottle that matters. No, what's inside the bottle that matters. Sorry, I reread that. Reading their very fine print in lower lighting, and it's also italicized. So pardon my slow reading. I sound like a fifth grader here. Anyway, our New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc delights the senses with delicious aromas of kiwi, lime, and grapefruit. Enjoy its balanced texture and crisp finish of tart green apples. Wine of New Zealand, blah, 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 stuff from the FDA. So the only other things, did they put on an ABV here? I'm sure they did somewhere. The question is, how proud are they of it? Or did they disguise it? Yeah, it's here disguised on the side. I would have guessed that. It's about 12.5, 12.8. So, so that right there is probably a solid B plus. We're looking for on the label. We want to know what's in the bottle. They got that, the variety, and if it's blended, what the percentages are. It's 100% Sauv Blanc. Where are the grapes grown? Marlborough, New Zealand. The more specific, the better. This is good, though. This tells us the region of New Zealand, not just New Zealand, and it is a specifically grown wine. What does the wine taste like? It's got flavor words, right? The only thing it's lacking, in my opinion, are any food pairings. Again, if you're new to wine, oftentimes a little guidance here would do you pretty well. So that's a good thing. To go, sit down, sit, be done. I know he barked. Don't get in the pack. Dogs found something to bark at. So anyway, a little food thing would do them good. And the more specific, the better, right? If you're going to bother doing food pairings, at least be specific. Don't be broad. So that's the only thing that I saw them leave off. So bravo with a solid B plus. They're maybe A minus because, again, easy to find, very attractive, good to go. Let's talk about them, and then we're gonna run down with the wine. We don't really do like a full review / tasting grid, but we want to answer 3 basic tasting notes. Is it well executed, right? Is the wine well made, right? Or does it have shortcuts or flaws? Is it on style? Does it taste like what it should? Does this taste like a Marlborough New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc? There is a profile for wines that come from there in general that we can compare it to. And then, of course, is it worth the price tag? Would I buy this and drink this again? Right. If this is a $10 bottle of wine, we're expecting $10 bottles of wine, things out of it. What we're really looking for here, by the way, are the gems that punch above their weight, that are in a class where they only cost $10, but they drink like a $15 or $20 bottle of wine. Those are the things we're looking for to find in any wine shop, by the way, context, let alone the grocery store grab. Many of the wines that I recommend or that I keep in my cellar are wines that I feel are very undervalued. that they actually drink as a wine should taste more above its price point. So we're going to need to do the price point videos here pretty soon too, come to think of it, because we reference that a lot, and I want to understand that everybody that I am a believer in getting what you pay for, but the price and concept of wine is a very slippery slope. The idea of getting what you pay for is very important, but it does not mean the more expensive you spend, the better it gets. Okay, that's also a misnomer. There is many crappy wines at $40 as there are at 14, and I want to make sure that we talk about whether the wine is executed at the level it's supposed to be. So we'll do that sometime later. This got classic pale straw colors regarding the Sauvignon Blanc. It's got that sunlight pale Sauvignon Blanc color. I already said on the nose, fresh up in the glass. I mean, it has got Sauvignon Blanc forwardness. Sauvignon Blanc is not a subtle wine by any stretch of the imagination. Right, we get those thiols, that little sense of gooseberry and ammonia. It's got a sharp sensation to it. Its acidity is coming off in the nose, like a piece of fresh squeezed citrus. It has that dominant acidic thing going on. I'm looking for anything behind that, though, that might hint to anything more expressive, or whether it just comes across as fruit. I don't get any real minerality or fruit or stone to it. No earth or soil, but maybe a little hint of floralness to it, almost like orange blossom water, that kind of thing. Very small. Again, it's hard to hear above the acid in Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blancs that come in that lower tone and have a little bit more complexity are fun, but they're not common. So this is not surprising. All right, on the tongue. Whoa, boy, that is a mouth pincher right there in your salivary glands all the way around. It grabs your tongue like a viper. It's right on you with that acidity. In fact, this is not a Sauvignon Blanc for the light of heart. For those that are acid shy or acid averse, that don't like sour things, this is not the wine for you. This even in the New Zealand factor, when it comes to New Zealand style Sauv Blancs, this one is pH is killing it, right? It is very pitched, and it is very juicy. Again, that's not a negative. That just is what it is. So this is a wine that plays down on the little wee chords and the squealy knees, and is not down there in the big bass, right? This is very, very tightly wound. The acids do carry a bit of the flavor. One of the challenges you have when you have high acid wines is fruit getting drowned out by acidity. Does the acid carry the fruit to your palate? And the answer there is I get more lemon pith and grapefruit now. In the very back, once that acid dies down just a bit, that's where you find that sour green apple and kiwi fruit. Okay, it's the lingering finish where you get those two softer fruits. But when it's on your palate, there's so much acid going on that it's drowning out those delicate flavors. Again, to answer this question, is it well executed? Yeah, it is not. I don't find anything that's flawed with it. It's not hitting anyone. It is definitely turning the acid up to 11, but that's a style choice as much as anything. I think if they were to be a little bit more refined about it, I think they'd go a little bit farther. In other words, this is compared to some others in its class. Starborough, Oyster Bay, I want to say Whitehaven. These are all in that 10 to 15 range. This is definitely showing that it's just a little out of tune or a little monodimensional, right? It's not as complicated as I'd like it to stay. And it doesn't make me want to rush back for more either. It's like that it's like the thing that when, I don't particularly enjoy grapefruit. I find it, as a morning experience. People who dive into a grapefruit to me and have a cup of coffee at the same time, I'm fairly certain they were the downfall for our people during the Bronze Age, or some other equal cataclysmic event, because there's so much going on there with the bitter world that I can't even handle it. So this is, again, it's kind of striking with that, and it doesn't make me want to rush back. It's not that refreshing thing. but it definitely is tuned in. Is it on style? I'd say yes. It's a particular style, but it is certainly a Marlborough New Zealand style. I could pick it out of a lineup as such. Not and is it worth the price tag? Yeah, I think for $9, $10, you're getting what you pay for. I think if you spend just a couple more on a different producer, I think you'd find a more pleasant experience in Marlboro, but certainly not bad. I would definitely consider buying it again, although, like I said, it's in a tough race with a lot of other very, very good wines. So to set yourself apart in the New Zealand Sauv Blanc game, you've got to do some things right. So this is maybe a thing. So, all right. So Mary was saying that Dave gets it. We'll go with that. If you ever get up here, we'll try yours too. Excellent. John Kerry said, Red Star grapefruit is very different from regular grapefruit, which I can't stand. Well, yeah, I mean, different types of, that is very true, is that there are very different types of citruses. I am referring to the big bitter bastards that, so this one is Rio Star, Texas Star, Rio Star. Okay. Red Star, Rio Star, Texas Star. I've heard of Ruby Red grapefruits, of course. But I just remember that growing up. I mean, and again, when you're younger, you have much less tolerance for bitter things. But even in my mid 30s, trying a grapefruit, a slice of grapefruit just raw, just makes me go, I am not a Greyhound type of person when it comes to my cocktails. I just got to say that out loud. So this, again, I said, it is perfectly good, perfectly acceptable, well within the bounds of normality. It's just not going to hit my top 40. That's all. So, pardon me, hit the mic stand there. Anyway, yeah. So, other questions? What do you guys got for me? Anybody got more comments or anything to ask about cooking with wine? Anybody that's shown up or left since that has any comments, questions, or anything? It's an open format. I will speak to you until you guys run out of steam, and then we'll get the show closed out. So, usually like to stay on with you guys for about an hour, but I'm not going to just sit here and twiddle my thumbs for you because, well, I do that on Fridays, but that's a separate thing. So it's a paid show. Gotta love that. Anybody? Bueller? No? You're just listening to me like we're watching on TV, like some sort of podcast where I'm just going to sit here and talk to you the whole time. Donna Den, what would you cook with white wine? Oh, lots of stuff. I mean, white wines, let's talk about just table whites, have got broad spectrum of purpose and use here. On the light side of whites, let's talk about using acidity to our advantage. I'm looking at you, Head Snapper, right? And that whole idea of using acid in here, you could use this for marinades, for anything that's going to be on the lighter side of the protein spectrum. So if you're marinating chicken, right, you're throwing a marinade together for a little bit of fish. Hell, I'd even throw this into a bit of ceviche. It'd be fantastic. It's got that grapefruit lime thing going on, lemon. Use it just like you would any one of those acids in your food. Add it to sauces. Do it as an additive method. I wouldn't really reduce this to anything because, again, reduced acid just becomes very sharp. Generally, when we're doing reductions, we're doing it for flavor concentration. I wouldn't do that here. But it would certainly go well with marinades. It would certainly be a good food additive. Take this, a little bit of butter, some dill, cook it down just a hair, and boom, throw that over the top of a piece of nice whitefish, cod, something like that. Bam, you're awesome. In the more robust ends of the white wine spectrum, actually, let's talk about the middle by comparison. This is where, when you're looking for that buttery / oaky / peach, pear, apple range, your Chardonnays, your Chardonnays, your Viogniers, those are great wine examples for those. Those are things where now what we're adding to the food is a little bit more complexity and layer of flavor. Again, we're often using small amounts of it as a layered flavor buildup, right? Really quality food usually isn't about being monodimensional. It's about building all these subtle little things that together become this amazing layer cake of flavor. And that's especially true in the middle. On the robust end, and in this case, I'm not using the robust end of the dry wine world. I'm using things like Madeira sherries and Marsalas. These are big, heavy wines that bring a lot of flavor to the table. Throwing sherry into your Manzanilla sherry into into a food. I gave you the example before of deglazing mushrooms, right? That's white wine mushroom reduction, man. Bam, bam, bam. Loving it. It is awesome. So white wine, just as much of a purpose as red wine in the cooking world. Great question, Donna. What does my T-shirt say? My T-shirt said this shirt contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Yes. So there we go. That is today's T-shirt. Unfortunately, I need to be working on getting my I think I just should start cutting the top of my head off and showing you, because I usually wear shirts that are somehow goofy or anyway show purposed on occasion. I've got a few wine T-shirts, but I got lots of shark T-shirts. Let's just say that. Tried out a Boda box of Shard, a bit oaky but really good in risotto. So there's an example. Boda box, right? It falls into that our boxes, cans, and bags series. That's one of those things I worry about on that lower end of the scale. And I say lower end, I mean the price per bottle that they're aiming at, right? They're not giving you good $20 Shard there. They're basically aiming at more like $8 to $10 Shard. So they're masking some of their flaws with oak. So oak is something that generally doesn't work with a lot of food flavors. But I could absolutely see with something like risotto, where you've got a nice bit of starchiness to it. You've got butter, you've got garlic and onions, depending on how you do your risotto, and your other flavors. That sounds delightful, Dave and Mary. That sounds awesome indeed. I could totally see that. Chardonnay is usually kind of my go-to when I do my what's the word? What's the proper word for it? There is an actual term for that you do when you shock the rice. Basically, when you're prepping your risotto, one of the first things you do is you take and you roast the rice just a little bit in olive oil, and then the first thing you do is you open it up with a cup of white wine, and you let that evaporate out all those aromas, and then you start building your risotto around that. Then you start adding your stock. Okay, that whole idea of that kind of opening up and waking the rice up is something that a lot of Italian folks I've watched do. And so my favorite with that though is a decent medium bodied Chardonnay, because I want that robust pear and apple kick to counterbalance all the earthy things that I'm going to do with mushrooms and sausages and whatnot. So awesome. Marsala is awesome with chicken. Yeah, so chicken marsala, right? I mean, the very concept right there. Marsala is a fantastic example of heavy red wines, and especially this is that part where a lot of modern cooks are afraid of chicken skin and need to stop being so. I mean, you need to find that skin. You need to get it golden brown. You need to let it add to the flavors. I don't care if you take it off for your service preparation because you don't enjoy the texture, but a lot of flavor is locked into that. And especially if you use a nice Marsala wine like that, you're going to find those fats in that wine are going to be an excellent addition to your food, especially if you take whatever's left in that pan and really kind of deglaze it just a little, add a little butter and bring that back to the table. Just toss it over the chicken at the very end. Fantastic. Disturbing is good. It keeps us guessing. Yeah, it's true. So, see, Marsala and mushroom. So there it is. My mother representing. You were already invoked in name once about being proud of you, that keeping Marsala / sherry on hand for cooking at all times, whereas it's unfortunately something that I always seem to forget when I'm at the liquor store or don't use often enough. I think what I'm going to have to do is make a special effort to have a month's worth of sherry recipes once a week or something like that. So chicken skin is the best part. It is true. I think I said this on a show a little while back, but I did an experiment. I was cooking with some chicken thighs, and I had some spare stuff from mirepoix, so I decided to make soup. Well, I was going to make chicken soup, but I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do, and so I took half a stick of butter and half a cup of olive oil and threw it in the bottom of the pan, and I basically took the chicken thighs, skin side down, and just fried them up golden brown, flipped them once and let them cook a little bit more, then pulled them out, then added the mirepoix, which is, for those that are not cooking familiar with that, so onions, carrots, and celery, let them in there, and they're starting to do their aromatic work. Well, the chicken cools down a bit. I took my tongs and peeled the chicken skins off. Then once the mirepoix was ready, I put the chicken back in, added in the stock, and then let it cook. And so I was basically letting that chicken slowly cook in that stock. And it got to a point where at the end, I'm just shredding the chicken off the bone. Well, that skin on the side, I took that as a separate and basically deep fried it to make cracklings out of the skin. chopped it all up before I put them in, and just put these little micro cracklings. And so it was like a southern fried version of chicken tortilla soup. Instead of that, that tortilla crisp that you get from there, instead it was this chicken skin, golden, crispy, awesome. I think I want to do the recipe again. I'm going to add some black beans to it at the end of this time. And then, but yeah, I served it with sour cream in the end, and it was freaking awesome. So I've got to write this down, and once I dial it all in and share it with you guys. But fun example of use of putting that chicken skin to work, and really in a texture way that most people are avoiding of that raw fatty thing in their mouth. They don't like the flubbery, blubbery thing going on, and that's fine. I mean, but this was so crisp that all you were getting was those flavor things. So like fried pork rinds, right? All right, now so this is on my list. Excellent. Mom, are you talking about the list for getting the food, or are you making sure that you have sherry or marsala for the mushrooms? Which would either one wouldn't surprise me. So Dave prefers Pinot Noir with mushrooms, sweet and dry. Marsala is always on hand. Absolutely. So again, it was with my my mushrooms. Again, I tend to deglaze with both. It depends on the protein I'm using. Again, red wines and red meat are kind of usually the direction I'm going with that. So that's where on steaks and stuff I tend to do it. But either way, I mean, I love that sherry flavor. I love what it brings to the party. Again, because of that higher alcohol by volume content at first, I think it carries more of the aromatics to the food. So deep fried chicken skin. Hell yeah. A list for the liquor store. Very, very nice. So excellent. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for the questions. We'll talk about recipes. I like that we can actually, you know what? I'll work on doing that too. I'll bring, I think that we always have things to talk about. I'll keep a recipe spare of the things that either I've been working on or I've got a list of something like several hundred recipes in the WineShark kind of bookmarks bar that are used for various online tastings. So I'm always trying something in, out, or new. One of the old ones that I did a couple summers ago that I want to have to give you guys it's scallops with a pureed mint and peas sauce, and it's friggin' wild. I love it. And again, it's this taste of basically fresh sweet snap peas and mint blended together into a sauce that you throw over scallops. It's grand, just grand. Serve it with a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc from Concy, and it is an absolute panty dropper. I love it. So you got that round steak recipe in Sauvignon Blanc. Yes, do that, Donna. Put the. I would love to see the recipe in the comments, or like I said, or send it over on Facebook. But that would be fantastic. I'm all about the recipe sharing. Food is our collective culture. So let me tell you. All right. So coming soon, we've got picnic wines on Friday. For those that want to talk about wine on the go, we're going to talk about wines that are fantastic for the picnic, what you should look for when it comes to flexibility in the field, and just also some of the principles behind. I mean, picnic is a broad category, so we're not targeting in on pairing. We're talking about practicality and some of the things that are, what's the one multi-tool you want to bring when you have to only bring one bottle of wine, right? So really a great example of kind of how that works. We're going to do Pinot Noirs 20 to 40 the week next. I'm really looking forward to that. We got some fantastic Pinot Noirs. And in the upcoming month, we've also got light whites coming up. We're going to do Albarinos, Pinot Grigios, things like that. We're going to do a smoke show, which is basically a pairing with wines with smoked foods. What else is in there? Hang on, let me look up my content list real quick. Give you guys a little preview because I've got to put these up on. These should go up on Eventbrite probably Friday. So I was meaning to get them done yesterday, but then a bumblebee happened. So where are we here? The Art of Wine, Pinot Noir. Yeah, smoked show, Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio. Oh, Wine and Cheese, part 3, of course. And then the lighter whites, Albarino, Vermentino, etc. Probably Soave maybe in there. So it's going to be fun. A couple of light white shows, a couple of big red shows, some cheese show. Can you ask for more? I mean, really. And by the way, I want to say thank you for all of us you guys that are joining us for the online tastings. With the pandemic and raging in full effect, there are virtual tastings everywhere. I mean, competition for this particular slot is very high. Everything from winemakers themselves to wineries to everybody like myself. There's a lot of people reaching out, virtual happy hours and this and that. And one of the things I'd like to say is thank you guys for choosing me and for choosing to support me in this way. It's fantastic. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am. Also, I'd like to say that how cool it is to see so many people doing so many different types of things. And if you're interested, the fact that, the separation of that, how things are, because again, we do an educational two-way show. You get to talk to the host, you get to learn, and it's low cost. A lot of people are out there just trying to sell you wine and do virtual happy hours. They talk at you, not to you. And again, I hope that you understand that as always, I want this to be a two-way learning street. And so you guys are great for putting up with me. So awesome. Coming up on wine Wednesdays, I think I'm going to do, we're going to have a video probably comes out tomorrow on wine as art and subjectivity. In other words, talking about tastes and remembering what it is that I'm here to teach you versus us talking about wine at the appreciation level, right? The subtleties that go along with that. Also, the prohibition rant needs to come here pretty soon because some of the factors that we're seeing. I got to say, one of the cool parts is the fact that we've seen a lot of restrictions being lifted from prohibition due to the pandemic, and I'm hoping that a lot of these things stay permanent once the crisis is over. Things like basically availability of you to get the adult beverages of your choices because your joy. You are adults and you get to make choices like that. So, no, John, there is no actual bumblebee story. That is a euphemism for I was distracted by a bumblebee. I ran down a rabbit hole of some sort of Wikipedia, YouTube, role-playing, video gaming, dog grooming, any one of these things I could be distracted by. So I did not have a chance to do the video yesterday. That's what I meant. So there's no actual bumblebee. So anyway, all right. So, well, thank you very much, John. I also appreciate the compliment. So, and same to you, Ms. Donna. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you guys very much. Hey, guys, throw some comments down in the comment section. Let me reply to you guys there. Let me know especially as I said, the question this week was, what is it that you guys are drinking as far as post-pandemic kind of stuff? Are you guys getting into some of these pre-made cocktails that I'm seeing around? Have you guys found something new? Or are you just sitting around with the old standards? Have you started just drinking vodka over ice and wondering where things have gone? If you like what we're doing, hit that like button and subscribe. Share with a wine-loving friend. If you really like what we're doing, check out our Patreon. We've got exclusive content that comes out there weekly, stuff that you're not going to see here on the YouTube channel, and even more in-depth at hand-holding of cool stuff, high fives, recipes, all kinds of fun stuff. In fact, there's a deal I'll make you, Patreon folks. I'll go ahead and share that recipe as soon as I get it of the chicken crispins recipe. So, guys, thank you guys so much. I will see you again. Until next time, I have been your WineShark. Cheers. All right, Tuco, now you can go barking. Yes, you may now go to barking at your brother. Go right ahead. Do a thing. You're awesome.